Hi Darragh, thank you so much for agreeing to take part in this video diary.
You're welcome.
So Darragh, maybe we will start at, you were diagnosed in 2007?
Yeah.
Maybe tell me a little bit about your life before you were diagnosed.
Well, in 2007 I was 26 years of age. I just recently moved out of home in with one of my friends. I was 2 years out of college, on the path to becoming a chartered accountant. I'd done 3 years worth of exams, I was on the road to do my finals, and then just around the Christmas time in 2007 or 2006, coming into the new year 2007, just began to feel unwell. I wasn't sure quite what was wrong with me, and then over the next couple of months I just kind of deteriorated gradually, and I thought life was going fine, but I just felt that there was definitely something up. And
so what type of symptoms were you having?
Initially, I remember going in the January to a gym class with a few friends, and just feeling really drained, and then afterwards noticed that there was a lump in my groin and thought maybe it might be just a strained muscle related to the gym class. Then a couple of months later, this began to progressively get bigger. I was very, very drained and very tired, and then I began to have night sweats, which is where I woke up in the middle of the night and my bed was literally drowned. I was wringing wet, and it's like I just dropped out of the shower and lay on the bed, and I had them every maybe 2 or 3 days over a period of 2 to 3 weeks. I was heavily just bunged up, and I really just couldn't pass food.
Were you telling anyone about it, Darragh?
At the time, I'd kind of spoken to a doctor, maybe not to say if it was January. I was diagnosed towards the end of February. In mid-February, I went to see my local GP, and unfortunately she didn't pick up on the symptoms, or just between me not giving the right information, her not picking up linking everything together, it wasn't apparent. But she did say to me, if you feel any more unwell, to go to A&E, which I did 2 weeks later, and literally immediately it was picked up.
Okay. And retrospectively, when you look back at that time, is there anything you'd do differently?
I'd be a bit more questioning, particularly in the January and after the gym class, and that not just after a gym class that you had a lump and you felt really drained over a period of weeks, that you'd question it a bit more, in the sense that you'd say to yourself, okay, I'm feeling unwell, there's a lump in my groin, maybe just associate the lump with something bigger than just being in a gym class. So I just didn't make that connection, and hindsight's a great thing, and I would make that connection now, but at the time, maybe even though I hadn't even, cancer was something that never crossed my mind. It's just something that I was quite ignorant to, or didn't really understand, so we just kind of put that to one side.
Okay. So it seems like you had a very full life, a very active life, and really moving out of home in your buddies, so on the beginning of a new adventure in many ways. So you presented to A&E and you said they picked up on it straight away. Who did you meet, or tell me about that?
Well, I went into Blanchardstown, and I met a surgical doctor, and then the next morning the head of his team, who was a consultant, so I can't remember his name.
Yeah, sure.
My mother worked with him quite closely.
Your mum works in
Blanchardstown? Yeah.
Okay,
she's a nurse there.
Okay.
And he immediately, once he took a look at me, and he ran some very quick tests without taking my bloods, or without looking, just by physically examining me. He was able to tell straight away that I was very ill, and he knew what was wrong with me, and he just said to me, you're very, very ill, but you're in great hands. We've got someone that's a specialist in this area, which was great help.
And when he said that you're very, very ill, did he give you a warning shot as to what it might be?
No, I don't think he was in a position to, because it wasn't his speciality, but he knew the symptoms that I presented were very similar to any of the symptoms that you'd expect with someone who had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Okay.
So he assigned me to another consultant, and then his team kind of over a period of about 5 days took me from doing a biopsy on my groin, removing the tumour, doing a number of tests, and all during that period I I was all the time, I hadn't kind of really accepted that this could be cancer. I focused in on the idea that they told me there's 5 different types. This could be, it could be viral, it could be, it could be I don't know, they gave me 5 different things, and all of them, and the last one I said was cancer. And several of my friends came in to visit me during that period, and they all thought I was quite well, just by the way I was talking to them, but I was extremely unwell and hadn't accepted that that's what it was, that it was cancer, or because it hadn't been confirmed, and my ignorance of it probably.
Okay. And what do you think, looking back now again, I suppose, what was it about you and having cancer at 26 that was difficult to digest, or what was that about?
One, I didn't understand it. I think that was the biggest thing. I really didn't know what it was or what it was about. No one else in my family had presented. None of my friends had presented. I'd heard of people, but they weren't close friends. And I was just kind of unaware or unsympathetic to cancer. Just didn't really understand it. So when that happened, I suppose, and it took me, before I really got to grips with it, was when I came to the Mater, I went to the oncology unit. That was when people sat me down, and they were specialists. The head nurse at the time took me aside and tried to explain my treatment, and that I was coming around to the idea then, even having met with the consultant and being very impressed by who he was. He couldn't connect with me on a personal level. And it wasn't until there was I can't remember his name, but there was a male staff nurse on the ward at the time, and he'd only been there shortly, and he'd worked on oncology units in the Philippines, and he sat me down at the side of my bed and kind of said, listen, you have to accept what's happening with you now and understand what you're going through. And then I kind of opened up. I started talking to the guys beside me, because albeit they didn't have the same thing was wrong with them, I spoke to them all about what was wrong with them. There was a guy beside me, Damien, he had a tumour in his nose. A guy across me, Porrick, who had lung cancer. A guy in the corner who had lymphoma from Mead. There was another guy in the opposite. There was 6 beds. In the opposite bed then there was a guy who had another form of lymphoma, but he'd spent a year in hospital. His treatment was complicated, and there was a guy right beside me who was very critical. And it wasn't until I spoke to all of them and realised, I actually put myself in a position where I said, I'm 26 years of age. I looked around the room, everyone was older than me, and everyone appeared to be way more ill than I was. And that's how maybe that wasn't the case, but that's how I interpreted it.
Okay.
And that's what I felt when it really, between that conversation I had with the staff nurse and looking around and talking to these people, I really began to understand what was happening. And then while I was talking to them, they were getting their chemo, and I was looking at them, and people have different ways of reacting to things, and they deal with it differently. They talk about their medicines. Some people are very technical, and some people are just kind of like, I'm getting my medicine now, and so they just deal with it in their own way. And that's what I felt was a great help, having 5 different personalities, and some of them were open and some of them weren't, but just to understand what was wrong with them made me understand what was wrong with me.
And how would they describe you in the room, do you think?
I think maybe I definitely wasn't aware of this, but I'd say they looked at me, particularly the older guys there was 2 guys in the room who were, one of them definitely was the same age as my father, and my father's in his 50s, and I'd say for him it was like a shock, because he's looking at someone that's half his age that is very, very ill. And probably initially they probably sensed that I was very apprehensive and didn't really understand, but I came out of myself in that period. And
when were you actually told that you had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
I was told in Blanchardstown. I went in on a Tuesday or a Wednesday night and stayed through the night in A&E, and the following Monday morning I was told, and that was February 2007.
And given your symptoms and given the diagnosis of a malignancy or a cancer, did it make sense? Were you feeling, or was it completely, oh my God, I don't feel bad enough to have a cancer diagnosis? Or where?
Well, there's 2 aspects. I didn't really understand what it was like to have a cancer diagnosis. Sure. I didn't really understand. And then my symptoms presented when, retrospectively, like maybe a few weeks later, I kind of said, whoa, my symptoms were so bad, like why was there no connection? Like I was just kind of like, why didn't I come earlier, or why didn't I push my GP on because I had 2 tumours in my groins and they were like golf balls.
And did she look at them or he look at them?
She looked at them, yeah, and she felt them, and she said it's probably just a double hernia.
Okay.
Which was, but I didn't kind of say, I physically looked unwell. Like people said to me over in fairness, the 2 weeks after that happened, between presenting in A&E and meeting with my GP for that consultation, I had deteriorated rapidly. Like it was very evident in my physical appearance.
And how do you, I suppose, feel about the GP now?
She's still my GP.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I don't think I should be critical of her or anything like that. I think maybe in hindsight she should have been more questioning, but at the same time, it's up to you. It's your responsibility. It's like, it's your body, your career, your life. They're your things. You have to, like, people can't read your mind. I know she's a health professional, but at the same time, she can't. She can only work off what information you give her or what you're prepared to give her. And I think at the difference between me presenting at my GP and when I was in the ward in the Mater were I was 2 very different people. Like when I accepted what was wrong with me and when I was going to my GP, I wouldn't have, anything that was wrong with me health wise, I wouldn't have been open on, or I wouldn't. So I think it's a 2-way street, like, and I wouldn't be critical. She's still my GP, I suppose that's the end point.
When you the treatment was chemotherapy,
yeah,
and did they explain about fertility issues at that time to you, or the significance of having treatment? Okay. Yeah. What was that like for you at 26? At
26 years of age, well, at that stage of my life, I wasn't in a relationship, or I hadn't been in a relationship in a number of years. It wasn't something that really entered my head, or thought would enter my head, until someone said it to me. And the consultant came and said to me, you have to present it to Harry Clinic.
Yep.
And I didn't really know anything about this, so they explained to me what this was about. And it only kind of dawned on me then, the significance of what this was, or what it meant, what it would mean for my life going forward. And I began to think about it then, and maybe that was one of the factors that raised the maturity about what was happening to me.
Okay.
And I went to the Harry Clinic, and obviously I couldn't, or the nature of how ill I wasn't able to bank sperm, but I was kind of, it opened my eyes as to what it was about. So it was a positive at the time. Now it's something that does concern me. I'm in a relationship. We're not engaged or anything yet, but at some point in the future that will become something that will be big for us. So it is a worry, but at the same time, I think if I didn't have my chemotherapy, I wouldn't be at this stage in my life. So I think it's there's a balance there. Like, yeah, I only got this far because of the chemotherapy, and if it means that I can't have kids, and there's always alternatives. And then, as you said to me before, like, there's plenty of good cases out there where you hear. So, yeah.
But it was something about that brought the severity of the situation maybe to the forefront, or that this was serious, or
yeah. Like no one had mentioned, when you go in, like the consultant doesn't say to you, like, doesn't be as morbid as say you're going to die, or use them kind of words, but it's things like going to the Harry Clinic or something that sets in your mind that, like, there's a significant implication of how ill you are to your life going forward. And I think that kind of conversation, and then the Harry Clinic thing was one thing, and then there was another thing. I don't mean to go away from it, but there was another thing where I think it was my kidney and my spleen had become very unfunctional, and it was just my blood was beginning to not clot, and that was on a Friday when I was supposed to go to the Harry Clinic, and this happened on a Saturday that my organs were things weren't looking good, and the consultant just said to me, listen, you can't go back to the Harry Clinic on Monday, you just have to be treated today. So that kind of set everything very clear at the time, as to how it was going to, how it was going to work. So,
And in relation to the fertility issue, or is it something now that when you enter a relationship, or the relationship that you're in, is it something that you feel you have to be upfront about, or is it?
Yeah, it is something. It's something that I was very upfront about it. The current my relationship that I'm in now is I'm gone out with Roisin 2.5 years, and we just moved in together a couple of months ago.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's great. And I knew her before I was ill. We worked together, and it wasn't until after I was ill, a couple of years after I was ill, that we started seeing each other. So she wouldn't have been aware of the ins and outs of my treatment. We weren't that close friends at the time. But when we initially started going out, it's one of the first things that I explained to her. I suppose at the time I was 28 and she was 26, 27. It's not something that is in your mind on your first date that you go out with someone, but it's something that you need to be straight with someone about. And if you look at your own parents' situation, her own parents' situation, you know, they're from families, and that's ultimately that's going to be your goal, and hopefully that will work out. So that's something that we are quite upfront about, and it is still our goal. Whether it works out that way or not is another thing, but like hopefully it will, and there's lots of options out there. Like, so,
absolutely.
You know,
so you'd be open to having different type of families.
Yeah, different type of family, or you know, I suppose it's kind of cool nowadays. I think Brad and Angelina. Yeah. So
very good. In relation to your treatment, what did that look like? So you started in February 2007, and you were an inpatient in the Mater.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what happened over the next couple of months?
Yeah, I was kind of stage 3, and I got very critical. So
what did that mean to you at that time? Stage 3.
Stage 3 was just something that they said. Like, lots of terms are being thrown at me, so it didn't really mean much to me, and it isn't something that I've ever really. Until people have come back to me and said, I know someone who's cancer and they're stage 1, and it was only then that, you know, the implications of me being stage 3 really came home. I understood it then. So when I was in hospital, stage 3 didn't mean a lot, but it did mean that, as I said, when I went to the Harry Clinic, I had to start my treatment, and the next day it become so critical. I was given. The plan that I was given was an R-CHOP treatment, which is most people on lymphoma have a similar kind of treatment. I had 8 treatments over every 2 weeks. Initially, my first 2 treatments I was done. My first one, I came into the Mater on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and I was treated I think the Saturday of that week. And then I went home on the Sunday or Monday. I think it was Monday they checked me out, and then it wasn't until another 2 weeks later I came in again, and they took me in as an inpatient for both of those first 2 treatments. But it just became very cyclical very early. It became less of I had a 2-week rota where I'd come in on a Tuesday, get my chemo, then I would come in. For them, the initial 2 or 3 days after that happened, I'd be quite ill. I was quite struggling. I was pumped up with steroids and quite excitable sometimes, and then really drained at other times. And then the following week I'd come in then on a Tuesday again. I'd have my bloods taken, and they do a little checkup, and it just became a rota. And I kind of worked around. Then 2 weeks I worked into like my chemo and my bloods. Then the first week I couldn't do much in terms of meeting people, but then the second week I got out and about. I met my friends. I told any of my friends that were coming to visit me, I said, it's week 2, you won't see me the first week at all. I'll just deal with my family and that, and I don't want to see anybody. And they just came and they visited me, and I was in much better shape, and I bounced off them, because I found that the 1 or 2 days before I was going for chemo, I became apprehensive again, because I knew I was like anybody. I knew that it wasn't going to make me feel well, and I was kind of nervous. Even when it came to my 8th one, I still felt the same, and a little bit down. But I could buzz off my friends and my family, and that's what I used them for that week, to lead up to it.
And did you move back home?
Yeah, I immediately, as soon as I got diagnosed, albeit I left my clothes in my friend's place, but I moved back in with my parents, and my mum's a nurse. My mum stopped working straight away. I was lucky. A lot of people don't have that. And I was at home, and at the time my younger brother and younger sister were both at home as well. So the family home was very much the family home. My older brother wasn't there. He'd moved out several years before that, but it was very family orientated. So the times when my friends weren't there, my family were there, albeit I wasn't in much form for them, but we could just, it was great. Like, I found that very helpful.
So you had your first 2 cycles of treatment as an inpatient?
Patient, yeah.
And then the remaining 6 you had as an outpatient?
A patient, yeah.
Okay. And what was work like, I suppose, at that time?
Yeah, I was at a relatively early stage in my career, so I was beginning to progress. I'd been there 2.5 years, so I got a bit of responsibility, but like anybody coming out of college, it wasn't crazy. I didn't work at all throughout that period. I didn't go back to work till September 2007.
Okay.
So my first treatment, I think it was the day before my first treatment, I spoke to someone in work, and they just put my mind at ease around, like, your pay and stuff is something you have to worry about. And he just put my mind at ease. So you come back to work when you want to come back to work, and all that will be looked after. And I was in a very fortunate position.
Okay.
And it worked both ways. When I went back to work, I think that I delivered on what they gave to me. So
very good. I suppose psychologically during that 6 to 7 month period, how do you think you coped?
Okay, I think there's a lot of ups and downs. I think when I was doing my treatment, I didn't find it that difficult psychologically. I don't think I even really spoke to anybody. I definitely didn't speak to yourself in that period. I think I was so focused on the cycle that I was in, and in my 2-week periods, I just broken it up. So it's probably the accountant in me. I was just very logical about this. This is 1 week at a time, and I'm moving from step to step. And I didn't really think too much. I think I had my first chemo when I went home, and my aunt wrote me a very kind of nice letter, and that upset me, and I got quite upset about that. But I didn't really share that with anybody. I just texted her and said thanks. I think I may, at different points during my treatment, text people and said thanks, and the text might have been quite emotional, but I never opened up to anybody at all. I think after my treatment, I went on a holiday with my uncle, and I still to this day maintain that was the best holiday I've ever been on. We went to Kerry. It was nice weather, and it was just me, my uncle and my aunt, and we did some fishing, and it was really relaxing, and it was real. I kind of felt normal again, because I knew in 2 weeks' time I didn't have to go in and have chemo. I'd have my bloods taken, and I had to go back to see someone in hospital. But it was just, I'd normalised myself, albeit I still looked a bit scary to most people, but I felt very, very normal. And then over the course of that summer, between going back to work, I thought a bit more. I had more time in my hands. I opened up to myself, but not necessarily others. Yeah.
And was there anything that we could have done differently at that time that could have engaged you more, or around your psychological needs?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's up to the individual. I think it's similar to when you're initially diagnosed. You have to engage other people. You're very sick, and it's hard to process that thought that you need to do that. I didn't necessarily want it. I felt that I had a massive amount of support from my family, particularly my mother. She hugely helped me through it by taking her time off work, and then she became part of the cycles. I could have engaged more, but I just felt that my family was the most important thing to me, and not everybody's going to be in that position. I mean, your role might be more than just the emotional side of it. It might be the practicalities, and I was fortunate that my employer was prepared to help me. I was at home. I didn't really have any worries from that perspective, where other people will definitely have worries. Sure. I think if this happened to me now, I know the times that we're in, I would definitely have to rely on you more and need someone to point me in the right direction as regards, how am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to clean the house, because I can't, I now live out of home. I don't know whether it'll be still on to go back home to be treated. There's huge practicalities there that not just to point me in the right direction, say, listen, someone can help you here. And I was made aware of a lot of that stuff. I remember I was told I could go away on a holiday if I wanted. And probably now, just given my own current situation, I would say that I definitely rely on you more. I just know from,
Sure, but at the time it seems the support was as such that you did it your way and it worked for you.
It worked. You need to think about what you need and what you want, and then what your family are prepared to offer you and what they can offer you.
Sure.
And my parents are in a fortunate position that they could help me, and I know that go back to the 5 guys on the ward. I knew that from talking to one guy in one bed who was the guy, middle-aged man in his 50s. He had a business to run, and his son was now looking after that business, and he was still taking calls on a daily basis. I don't know how the practicalities of who can help on that, but there's definitely people out there that can help you, and there's lots of support groups. I know that now from talking to different people since I've been treated.
What was it like for your family, do you think, you being unwell?
Very strange, I'd say, initially. I don't think we're not like a chatty family. We don't sit around the kitchen table and talk about things very openly, but I definitely found that my younger brother and sister never really spoke about it at all.
To you or to the wider family?
To me and to the wider family.
Okay.
I don't think it wasn't something that they felt they could talk about, I don't think. My brother would have been 22 at the time, and my sister would have been maybe 18 or 19. She just started college. They didn't really cope with it. My older brother's quite engaging in everything. He just kind of plays the elder lemon role, where he just kind of links everybody up and just practically and was there all the time, not necessarily talking about it or saying, are you in tomorrow for treatment? His reaction was quite good. I knew that I knew from him that he was upset about the whole situation, and I knew about my younger brother and sister. They were quite upset about the whole situation, but they did a different way. But my older brother might have been slightly expressive. You could see that when he was around me initially, he was, he wanted to reach out to you, and I got that off him. My father was, I've heard, I'd never seen my father cry before until I was initially diagnosed, and he cried in front of me. And that was I found that a bit strange. It was probably one of a number of kick-off factors that kind of set things home, that I was very ill. And my mum was she's a nurse, and she just put on her nurse's hat. I knew that she was upset in the background, but she never let me see that. I don't think she wanted me to see that, but she just thought of the practicalities immediately, and just took her time off work every morning. I think she was talking to me the other day about she used to make fairy cakes, so I could take a fairy cake and take the steroids, because they were hard to stomach. So she used to make fairy cakes for me in the morning, so I'd have a cup of tea and a fairy cake, and then 25 steroids, which over the space of an hour, and 2 hours later I was absolutely wired. But she was practical about it, but I knew at the same time in the background she was very, very upset. So.
And did it change your relationship at all with your family?
Yeah, it totally changed my relationship. I think just my relationship with my family, just everything in general has changed hugely. I think I'm a lot more open about it. I talk to my mother about it the whole time. I think myself and my mum built an extra kind of bond over the whole thing, because we were side by side for the whole thing. And then it kind of brought us together a bit more. We're maybe, not that we talk about things more, we just kind of relate to each other a bit more. And there's definitely more of an appreciation, and it comes with age anyway, of how important your family is to you. But I think that it was definitely a significant factor in it. Yeah.
Okay. And you spoke about, I suppose, the family communicating differently, perhaps not open communication, but there seems to be an awareness of people being upset.
Yeah.
Should illness come into your family again, do you think you as a family would communicate differently to what you did during your time? Yeah,
I suppose I mentioned it earlier, my mum's been diagnosed with the same thing, and it's very recent. She had her first chemo yesterday. And I think I don't know. I think with any family that's been touched by cancer, I think my mum's best friend from school is helping her out now an awful lot, and her husband had a form of cancer in the last few years. I think there's a realisation that this is big, and it's kind of, you need to help, and kind of everyone needs to pitch in and just get it closer. But now me and my mum were like, yesterday we're just bantering about different things, like she'd had her first chemo and I was talking about how do you feel, and you know, even like the little practicalities. I think everyone gets a metallic taste in their mouth, so I brought her a tin of pineapples, you know.